All right, hello and welcome back, Brett here. So in this video, we're going to be looking at a passage, and this passage is talking essentially about sustainability. And I've already told you this is the course in the sustainability. You can show up in your faith super powerful, and you can just go and do all kinds of stuff in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. But if you lose your faith, you didn't get there. You just lost the last 50 years. If you go into ministry super strong and you overwork yourself and you're not sustainable, and then what, 3 years in, you're burnt out, 5 years in, you're burnt out, you lost the last 50, 55 years of your ministry that you could have been making slow, tiny, incremental results. And over 50 years, it would have been so powerful. But because we weren't sustainable, we actually lost so much fruit that we could have produced. And so this is a course on sustainability, and this passage is about sustainability through hardship that you're going to get. All right, so let's look at this. This is in Hebrews 12, and we're going to start at 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out with us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Okay, so I want to break that down because there's a lot there. But this is essentially exactly everything we were talking about in this course. This is Paul just, how was I saying? I'm just saying what Paul said and putting it into sort of modern terms, right? Therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, who's the great cloud of witnesses? It's all the people of faith from the past. It's all of the people that are watching us every day now. It's God and the heavenly hosts. It's the angels that look into our lives, the Bible says, with their heads turned sideways and kind of almost confusion and awe, like what is going on here? It says even the angels long to look into such things. Okay, so we have all of these witnesses watching our every move. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. So when we're new to faith, we're working the sin out of our life. We're trying to get all that bad stuff and just like, okay, let's, get rid of the television addiction. Let's get rid of all the things that God is going to slowly tell us to remove. We're going to remove that. Right. And this is what it is to sacrifice the flesh. But there's another part, and this is the first part. Let us throw off everything that hinders. Everything that hinders. That's not just sin. Sin hinders us, and we need to get that out of our life. We throw that off. What's it say? If the eye causes you to sin, gouge it out, because it's better to lose an eye than to basically not go to heaven, something like that. Well, this says throw off everything that hinders. What is going to hinder us is we're talking about is getting knocked down and getting knocked down so hard you don't want to get back up, you know? And I mean, people obviously struggle with that on a life sense. That's suicidal ideation, but also just on a ministry. I got knocked down in ministry 3 years. I was totally burnt out. I was like, man, I don't think I can do this. This is way too hard, in business. You get knocked down, you work for years, and then you lose 50% of your clients in a month. And you're just like, what is going on? This isn't supposed to happen. You know, someone commits suicide. That's happened to me. How do you, those are things that hinder, those are things of the world that hit you so hard, you don't know how to continue. And this is when we begin to talk about the parable of the soils. One soil was shallow. And what happened? The plant grew up super fast, but the troubles of this life, tore it away or whatever it was. And also, I think that's probably also valid with the thorns, right? The shallow soil, the roots weren't deep enough to hold it when the storms came, and so that plant isn't going to make it. It's not going to bring up enough water. It's not going to have the roots to hold it deep enough. Well, what about the thorns? The troubles of the life are the thorns, and they choke out the plant. That's what we're talking about, except the troubles of the life are really hard. Okay, so we need to throw off everything that hinders. That means we need to accept all of the possible things that could happen. and then make our peace with those, because that's what it might take to finish the race. What did it say? We'll continue. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. That's the next part. What do you mean run with perseverance? Why can't I just run? Isn't life like a skip? We're skipping through the field of flowers. Oh, this is so great. I came to Jesus and now life is easy. No. We come to Christ. He does. He gives us peace. He gives us freedom. He gives us salvation. He gives us relationship with God. He gives us eternity in heaven. It's totally a win deal on our end. We win the most here. But also, we die to our flesh, and the world hates us because we know Christ, and the world hates us because we want to persevere and live out our calling and build up treasure in heaven. And the world's just hard to start with. So run with perseverance. Why? Because it's hard. And if any of you have ever done long distance running, I used to run the mile in track. It is grueling, and the question is, can I finish the mile? And if the answer is yes, it's how fast can I finish? How fast can I push myself to get to that end faster, right? And that's what we're talking about. Not only do we want to live a Christian life, we want to live a powerful Christian life. We need to endure to the end. Consider the cost when building a tower, so you don't get halfway up and then look like a fool when you can't finish. That's that verse and passage, right? But if you can finish, how quickly can you finish? Why would you want to build a tower for 10 years if you could build it in 5? How do we get more results faster? If we're capable of getting there, let's pump it up, and that's okay too. It's not required for salvation. It's good to do when you can. So throw off everything that hinders. Okay, let us run the race with perseverance that's marked out for us. So God has a race marked out for you specifically, and you have to run it with perseverance because it is going to be hard. It's promised right there. Okay, and how do we do it? By fixing our eyes on Jesus. That sounds super Christian-y when people are like, just set your eyes on the Lord. It's like, what are you talking about? Okay, why do we do that? Fixing your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer. He did it first. He already did it. And not only did he do it first, he did it on the hardest possible difficulty to show you that you can do this one. If he can do that, he can get you through this, whatever it is that you're called to get through. And some of us are going to have harder paths than others. That's just a fact. The pioneer and perfecter of faith, he had the perfect, most faithful walk in the hardest possible circumstance. Obviously, he was horribly tortured and killed, and he did it successfully, and that's how you have victory, because he gives you his strength. For the joy set before him, okay, so I want to focus in on that first, but for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the Father. Okay. Okay, why was Christ able to do these things? Because the reward we talk about in the strategy course, the vision that he's shooting for was so good, it was worth the current sacrifice. Okay, and hopefully you're starting to see all of these courses sort of add up and come together. The way I'm teaching you to think is sort of integrated, and all of these different courses work together to give you a particular mindset, and it is a mindset that sets you up for a fruitful and successful life, in our case, for God, right? Not necessarily for money or fame or power, any of this stuff, even though that's good. I don't think it's a bad thing. If I could have money, I'd like to have some money as opposed to just be broke, but God calls us to different places. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. What's the joy? Eternity, ruling with God in heaven forever, relationship with mankind again, restored relationship. I think that's the big one. The reward that was before him was so much more than what he had to endure now, and what he had to endure was the worst possible fate. So that tells you right there, you want to go back to the strategy, is your vision had better be bigger than the hard things that you want to do. And that's why people are like, some people tell me like, yeah, you really shoot too high. You need to like be more reasonable. And it's like, no way. I'm okay if I shoot high and fail, because when I shoot high and I go for the biggest possible vision God can bring me to, and I fail, big deal, because I gave 100%. I'm okay if I show up to heaven and I say I did my absolute 100% best, and also I totally botched it. Like I did my best and absolutely got nothing for you despite my effort. I'm happy saying that. That's okay if that's what God has me to. What I'm not willing to do is to be like scared of trying to do more and I know I can and not doing it. That's the parable of the talents and burying the talent in the ground. I don't want to be that. I would rather shoot high, aim for the stars and hit the moon than to not do anything at all and go low. Okay. So all of these work together. So Jesus is shooting high. He's got this huge hope because his vision is reconciliation with mankind, is eternity with mankind, and which is we are his love, his bride. The bride of Christ is the church, you and me and all the Christians. And so he's got this huge vision, and he's willing to do the ultimate sacrifice for his bride, which is us. Okay, so for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, right? He didn't care about the shame that brought onto him as God of the universe dying on a cross. He said, I don't care about the shame because that thing over there is way better. And he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. He had the victory. He was victorious, okay? Now consider him who endured such opposition from sinners so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. What happens when life gives you the punch in the face? And I'm saying that specifically because remember Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until life punches you in the face. And what does it say? Consider, I'm inputting Christ because it says him, considered Christ who endured such opposition, the most opposition of any person ever in history who was brutally tortured and murdered. Consider him and how he was treated and the things he went through so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Okay, that is very powerful. If that's not hitting you, it should be hitting you. Because why? Because when Christ calls me to run a business and we lose a client that we worked so hard on, when I have relationships with people or you have relationships with people and those people take their own life, when someone gets sick and dies of a sudden disease, I've talked with people, and this is also in the evangelism course, or the how to share the gospel course, but talking to a guy, his dad's diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and dies within like 30 days of finding out, and they had no idea, right? How do you get up from that stuff? You got to look to someone who did it before you so that you even just know it's possible. Okay, and that's what Christ does for us. And if we're going to be little Christians to the best of our ability, and I'm not saying we don't have an extent to our ability because we absolutely do. There is an edge of Brett, and some days I reach it. Okay, to the best of my ability, I want to say, God, okay, help me to just do the thing I need to do, even though it's hard. And when it's not there, it's thank you that you give me the ability. When there's no more Brett to go, then I'm totally leaning on God. And it's thank you that you give me the ability. Thank you that you give me the victory, whatever that is. And that's when we see, I believe it's Paul who says, when I am weak, then I am strong. Why? Because when I'm weak, when I reach the edge of myself and I'm coming up short, I'm actually at my strongest because that is when I am most easily capable of leaning in on God, and God's the most powerful being there is. So with this, the goal here is to understand that when things get really hard, we endure. What does it say? Hold on. I want to make sure I have it. We run with perseverance the race marked out with us. When things get hard, it's not time to quit. It's time to dig your heels in and get serious. And if that sounds dramatic, I'm putting a bug in your ear because when it happens to you, you'll remember this after you finish panicking. You'll remember this and you'll be like, oh, now I get it. If you've already experienced it, then you already know what I'm talking about. So in this, we're talking about endurance. We have Christ, we can endure, and we should endure because it is the path that God has marked out for us. And there are all of these people watching. The people from the past, the saints up in the saints, I'm saying the saints, that's very Catholically, the people of the Old Testament who are of faith. That's, I believe, what's being referenced there. The current people all around us in our lives, they're looking to see how we choose to respond. And if we roll over and give up, like a lot of other people do, what is it that they want that we have? There's nothing to want. They do they will do the same thing. We're just doing what everybody else does. So we need to bear up, look at Christ, and persevere. All right, we're going to continue on this line of reasoning in the next video. I'll look forward to seeing you there. God bless.